Hi, I'm Rebekah Reysen. Welcome to season 2 of the ChitChat. I'm here with my colleague, Jeremy Roberts. And today we have a very special guest named Kayla VonBurg. Let me tell you a little bit more about Kayla. Kayla VonBurg is originally from Carlisle, Illinois, and is currently pursuing her PhD in higher education. She attended the University of Mississippi and earned a BA in Spanish in 2019 and just got her master's in higher education student personnel. She presently works as a graduate assistant for the Center for Student Success and First Year Experience in Academic Support, serving as a graduate instructor for EDHE 202, Fundamentals of Active Learning. So we are excited to talk to Kayla today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to see you. And we're so lucky to be able to work with you on a regular basis. And all this work that you're doing with the Lyceum Locker is super important. So we thought for sure we wanted to have you on the show to be able to talk about that. So let's kind of just start off talking about you. You know, you're a highly motivated, accomplished person. Let's talk about your goals, your career development so far, and kind of what your goals are for the future.
Yeah, so in college, I started off as pre-med. I didn't really make it quite past that organic chemistry benchmark and had to decide that I needed to do, something other than becoming a doctor. I studied abroad when I was a sophomore. I lived in Madrid, Spain for a semester, took classes there. And that was a really transformative period in my life. That was very important for me. And it kind of made me realize, hey, I kind of want to help people have these same experiences that I just had. I want to plan these unbelievable experiences that they will never forget for the rest of their life. And that's kind of how I got into student affairs. I wanted to work and study abroad, and I wanted to make sure that I got to help plan these experiences. So I started as a GA within the study abroad office in 2019. I worked primarily with international students, specifically our J1 exchange students, working on their semester, planning events for them, making sure they're maintaining status, whatever, with the government. But then I kind of decided, I need a change. I feel like I'm kind of pigeonholing myself into one field. And I don't know if I want to be here for the rest of my life. And then I just kind of got lucky, and there was an instructorship open here. And that's where we began at the CSSFYE, and where I got to start teaching EDHE 202, which has been one of the best experiences I've had at the university. Looking to the future, I'd like to, get my PhD in education, of course, but I'm really interested in advocacy as well as case management. And I'd like to keep moving forward with that. I'm not really sure what that looks like in terms of a career. I know there's a lot of things I can do. I just know that I want to do something that helps commit to change and changing systems so that people can live fuller, better lives.
Okay. And speaking of case management and everything that you just spoke about, this past spring semester, you had an idea that basically came from your teaching of EDHE 202 and seeing what all was going on. So I remember whenever you came to me and said, I've got an idea. Can you just listen to me for a few minutes, kind of see what you kind of think about it? And you were talking about a school supply closet that we have now dubbed the Lyceum Locker. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened in EDHE 202 to get you starting on this process? And then you were also doing a practicum with the UMatter office, which tied in perfectly to what we had going on over here at the time. So could you talk about that and the birth of this locker?
Sure. So the Lyceum Locker kind of came to mind. It really came to mind earlier. I just didn't put it together. Mm-hmm. When my first semester teaching here, that was when the pandemic started, and that's kind of when everything went to hell. Excuse me, but to be fair, that's what it was. Yeah. And we were trying to figure out, how can we get these students to turn in work, when some of them are not having their basic needs being met. And one student in particular, she wrote her final essay. And it kept me up at night for a while. And she wrote that because of her financial situation, because her loans weren't coming through on time, just because of the myriad of things, she couldn't afford access codes in order to pay for her homework, in order to pass classes. Therefore, she was failing. And therefore, there was nothing I could do about it. And that really bothered me. It just felt like a really unnecessary barrier to something that should be open and accessible to everyone. You know, education is power. Education should be, it's a right, in my personal belief. So that kind of kept in the back of my mind, and I kept that essay so I can read it from time to time. And then this past spring came, and I was teaching, and I noticed that, you know, I'm still noticing the same pattern. Some students, you know, just didn't have money to pay for things. And then I noticed that some students were coming to my classes like without even pencils or pens or like paper, just, you know, your basic bare bones supplies that you need to get through college. And it bothered me, you know, there's no reason for that. And that's kind of where that idea came about. So like I said, like you said, I ran over to your office and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm very lucky to work in a supportive office that, you know, lets me do pretty much whatever. So you said we did that. And then I happened to be working with Mandy Bloodworth at the time, who is a case manager with You Matter. And she loved the idea as well. And then the Lyceum Locker was born.
Okay. So what kind of items are in the Lyceum Locker?
So we have a lot of things. So we have like your basic supplies. So all kinds of notebooks, you know, the wide ruled, the college ruled, 1 through 5 subject, pens, pencils, binders. We have 1,000 of those. And then we have like kind of some like, not necessarily school supplies, but like weird stuff that people use to get by in college. So like dry erase markers, calculators, staplers, or the hexagonal paper that you use in organic chemistry for those reactions, that's in there too. Just like a myriad of items that we think of randomly that can help students get by and kind of bridge that gap so that more students can be successful.
Right. Okay. So how does a student access the locker?
Sure. So the locker is located in the Johnson Commons East on the first floor in the lobby. It's a set of cabinets all the way to the back of the building, or about middle through the building. And what they do is the building is open from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, whenever the university is open and in operation. Students are welcome to come in anytime between those hours, go to the cabinets and take whatever or however much they need for absolutely free, no questions asked. This way things are discreet and students can get what they need without feeling embarrassed about it.
Right. Okay.
That's great. And so in terms of donations, like let's say somebody wants to donate something, what can donations look like, and are you still taking donations?
Yes, so we absolutely are taking donations. We are in great need of them actually. So we, there are 2 ways. The first way is you can drop physical supplies off to my office. I'm located in 116 Johnson Commons East. You can also email me and I can come and pick them up from, you know, pre-roll anywhere in Oxford. And that email is lyceumlocker@olemiss.edu. Your second option is you can make a monetary donation. Monetary donations are going to help us sustain this so that we can keep this going for the future and not just for this semester. And those monetary donations can be made through the UM Foundation. We currently have a giving link, and that is umfoundation.com/locker. Anything, really anything at all helps us keep this moving and moving forward.
Well, and I think you've really hit the nail on the head with this, you know, process, and you've done such a great job of advocating for students. And, you know, as we know from working with college students, I mean, every student has a story. And a lot of the times students who are struggling in college, like that, you know, letter that you saw or that homework assignment that you read about where the girl was really struggling with her academics because of financial issues. You know, there's so many things that are underlying the surface beyond like just whether we can take good notes or have great study habits. So having worked with a lot of different students, you know, students on probation, those coming back from suspension, dismissal, and even those in good standing, what are some things that you've seen just in terms of things that have impacted students academically?
I think the distinction is really important to make here between probation and suspension and what I've seen. So your probation students are typically freshmen. They're typically students who are having a difficult transition to college. A lot of them are, and not all, but a lot of them are having a difficult transition from high school to college. They're not sure how to manage their time. They're not sure how to study. They're not sure how to exist, as an 18-year-old in a free space, to do whatever you want. And that's very hard. And I think that course gives them a lot of support in order to exist and to be successful and to thrive here. On the other hand, you have your suspension students, who I work with the most. And, I would go even as far to say as 98% of them are dealing with something that, is just wildly out of their control. So just to name a few scenarios that I've seen, I've seen students who lost both of their parents in one semester, who had a sibling commit suicide, who are working 3 jobs to pay rent, who are behind on tuition payments, students who have gotten evicted, just like really terrible things that no one should have to go through, that's landing them on suspension. And it's difficult as an instructor, and it feels almost insulting as an instructor to teach them study skills, because I know, and they know, and we all know that that is not why we're here. That is not what has led them to academic suspension. It is not for a lack of desire to do well in college. Not one of them doesn't want to do well. Every student in there is doing their best, but there are just systems that are not meeting students where they are at. Higher education is not meeting this moment as to where students are, and therefore there is no infrastructure, nothing to catch the students when they fall between the cracks. And that's kind of what's happening here. And it's hard as an instructor to find a way to support them in that way, when sometimes there's no infrastructure or system that can support them. But I do my best.
Well, and I think our jobs too, working with students like EDHE 101 for freshmen on probation, and EDHE 202 for students returning from suspension dismissal, and then also great things under the Center for Student Success as well, like EDHE 105 and 305. Those are some great mechanisms, I think, that the university has tried to kind of put in place to catch students. But it's definitely tough to be able to know every student's story, because a lot of this stuff is deeply personal, like you said, in terms of why they've gone on academic, probation or suspension. In terms of your work with students, do you have advice for students on academic probation, or even just for students in general?
Yeah, for the students on academic probation suspension, I usually tell them that knowing your resources is half the battle. A lot of the students are struggling with something, and sometimes there is a resource on campus that exists for free that could help them, but maybe they just don't know about it because they don't have someone to connect with on this campus. And that's why I think EDHE 202 is so good, because the instructors are there to assist them in this way, because they're very knowledgeable on what exists on this campus. And if they are a person that student trusts, that student is going to go to the instructor and say, hey, I'm struggling with X. Can you refer me to X? And they can do it. And that's why it's so great. And I think the most important advice you could give to one of those students is just having someone, and then also being aware of your resources and not being afraid of going and ask them. There are, probably 500 student affairs professionals on this campus who are here to help them. They're not a bother. That's what we're here for. And I think it would be really good if they would reach out early and reach out often, and that way they can get the help that they need quick.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, you just completed a master's program and you're now going into a PhD program. You were actively involved in some stuff with higher ed as a master's student. What advice do you have for your fellow graduate students that are looking to go into the higher ed program, or are looking to have some of the same experiences that you had as a graduate student or a graduate assistant?
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for PhD students because this is only my first year and I have no business giving anyone advice in that realm. But for master's students, I think my biggest piece of advice, and my biggest probably lesson I learned in this time, is to set your boundaries firm and set them early, because this is going to be a lot of time. There's going to be a lot of things that need your attention. And it's really important to remember that you are a student of your department first and foremost. And the studying and the work that you do as a student is actually very important and very valuable to the field. If we did not have research in student affairs would not be a legitimate field. And that's why it's very important that we grow and nurture scholars in this field. And that's why I think it's really important that those boundaries between work and personal and school are set firmly and early. That way you're able to focus on your school while also not burning yourself out on the work.
So before we move on to our lightning round of questions, do you have anything else that you would like to add about maybe what you do here in the Center for Student Success, about the Lyceum Locker, or about graduate work in general?
Well, there's a lot I could say. I'll stick with the Lyceum Locker because that's probably the most important thing right now. I just want to say one more thing and say that, it's not just my students who are impacted by financial disparities. The pandemic has really blown open a lot of economic distress for a lot of students here. This is something that impacts all students here, not just mine. And that's why I think it's really, really important to give if you can, or to share, because we really want to reach everyone we can and make sure we can make this thing the best we can, because our students deserve it.
Okay. So now we've got 2 questions for you for our lightning round. And it's just to get to know you a little bit better. The first one is, what was your freshman year of college like? So if we could go back to Kayla's freshman year, give us a snapshot of what that looked like.
Oh, geez. Okay. So that was, I think 6 years ago. I'm from a little tiny town in Illinois called Carlisle. It's about an hour east of St. Louis. There were 70 people in my graduating class. So I was coming from a very small town, and Oxford seemed very big to me. And I just remember, that was my first time away from home. And I don't want to say that moving away from home was a rebellious act for me, but it almost was. I just wanted to experience something different and kind of be away from my parents and just everyone else, and grow on my own. So that was a lot of learning. There were a lot of calls to mom being like, hey, does this cot look infected? Or hey, how do I get health insurance? A lot of questions like that, right. Trying to grow up and figure things out on my own. But it was also really good. Being so far away meant that, I didn't get to go home on the weekends. So I met a lot of really good friends. I got to join some student organizations that were really impactful. And just relax and be away and get to do things on my own for the first time. So I would, in one word, I would call it transformative.
Okay. So who would you say would be a mentor or a professor who you found to be someone who was inspirational for you throughout your academic journey?
You see, when you guys sent me these questions, I thought about this for a while, because there's a lot of people who I could say, there's been a lot of people who have invested a lot of time in me, 2 of them sitting right here talking to me. I think probably the person who has had the biggest impact on me, her name is Hannah Juliff. She was an international student advisor with the study abroad office while I was in college. She now works for CU Boulder as in the same role, but she really believed in me and was one of the very first people in college to believe in me and to believe that I was competent enough to do a very complex role. And that impacted me for a while. And she taught me how to do things. She taught me everything I know about advising. She taught me everything I know about visas. It's all because of her. And she took the time to do that because she saw potential in me. And even now, she still serves as a career mentor to me. And, her insight at just being a little bit older than me, but still kind of in the same field, doing the same things. That's really invaluable to hear it from someone else who's just a little bit older than you. And yeah, just learning from her has been really, really great.
Okay. Well, Kayla, we want to thank you for being our first guest of season 2 of the ChitChat. And everybody watching, we will have the information for the Lyceum Locker and the links below. And whenever we share this on social media, we'll also share the information for the Lyceum Locker as well. But what you're doing with that project, I think, is going to be a great success. And we're happy that it's housed here in academic support. So again, as Kayla said, we're open from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. If you ever need anything, please come talk to us. Please come see us. But for Rebekah Reysen, I'm Jeremy Roberts. We want to thank you for tuning in to our first episode of season 2. Have a good one. Bye, y'all.
Bye.